me now, Congressman Adam Schiff, who is the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. And Congressman, thank you for joining me. The reason I wanted to talk to you is that you are one of only about a dozen people, due to your position on that Intelligence Committee, who gets to access the most highly classified briefings. And obviously, you can never talk at all about what you see in there. But I would love your guidance as we, on the outside of this, attempt to figure out what is going on. Donald Trump saying that there was a determination made about the intelligence contained in that dossier. Director of National Intelligence saying there was none. What should we think?
Well, I would go with the Director of National Intelligence. Unfortunately, the President-elect has demonstrated that you really can't rely on what he says in his tweets, and you can't rely on what he says in his press statements either. And the best illustration of that was when the intelligence community released a public report about the Russian hacking. The Trump organization put out a statement from the President-elect saying that it showed that there was no effect on the outcome of the election. But of course, that's not at all what the report said. In fact, that would be well beyond the scope of what the intelligence community can assess. Instead, it said merely that there was no tampering with the vote counting machines. But plainly, the daily dumping of documents targeting Secretary Clinton had an effect. We may never know whether it was determinative or not, but effect. So you couldn't rely on what the President-elect said about the report. I don't think you can rely on what the President-elect said about his conversation with Director Clapper. And the director's statement made it very clear that they have made no judgment on the reliability of those documents from that private security firm.
One of the things Director Clapper did say in the beginning of that statement was expressing his frustration, regret, anger even, I believe, about the leaks. And I have to say, wouldn't you agree that it is fundamentally, in some senses, unfair to the reputation of the individual who's about to take the oath of office, that there's now this kind of cloud of suspicion that hangs over him due in part to this leak?
I think the director was exactly right, not only to point out in his statement that these leaks are corrosive in their effect, but to call the President-elect and say that he does not believe this is the intelligence community that was responsible for the leak and that this is very damaging. It's obviously not only damaging in terms of the President-elect and his reputation, but also it's damaging just to the trust between the President-elect and the intelligence community, which started out at a pretty low ebb. What concerns me the most, frankly, beyond reputation and beyond anything else, frankly, is what are the facts here and who is going to investigate all of the aspects of Russian interference in our political affairs, because I think, frankly, the investigation ought to follow the facts wherever they lead. And the Russians have used a whole variety of tactics, everything from blackmail to extortion to the funding of extremist parties to Europe to hacking to dumping of forged documents. I put nothing past the Russians, and we ought to have a bipartisan, nonpartisan commission like 9/11 investigate this.
All right, Congressman Adam Schiff, as I said, ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. Thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.